The Rebbe is reading a prayer for the children who have been lost to us through sanctifying God's name.
תפילה לעילוי נשמתם של ילדינו הקדושים שנפלו על קידוש השם, שבזכותם אנחנו יושבים חיים וכמובן לומדים תורה בארצנו הקדושה.
That we have now 120 people taking part. So I ask from all of us to pray to God for raising up the souls of the soldiers, the men and women, precious men and women that gave their souls for the sanctity of God's name, and for the nation of Israel, the land of Israel. Also for all of those that were killed and wounded in terror attacks. May God bring their souls higher and higher in their fitting places and be connected to the light and to arrive to eternal pleasure. This lesson is on Memorial Day in Israel. The question is if all of this learning that the Ari is talking about desire to receive, a spiritual desire to receive. The Rebbe says yes, but we can also draw forth from this to the work on our level of trying to purify our desire to receive material matters. The question is if Adam HaRishon went through also this progression, and the Rebbe says yes, that Adam HaRishon went through this progression and was the first that perceived all of this progression. The Rebbe's asked if there's suffering, does it mean that I'm not in the right place? The Rebbe says that sufferings are meant to arouse us to look deeper, to ask what's going on with us. The Rebbe says that in regards to Adam HaRishon, we'll learn about this more in the last chapters of the Peticha, that it speaks there about Adam HaRishon. The student says, instead of prostrating on the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we can prostrate on Rabbi Shimon's holy books. The tzaddikim, even after they've passed on, are considered alive through their holy book. The Rebbe says, yes, the tzaddik is only an intermediary between us and connecting to God. There's three aspects. There's God, the rabbi, Rebbe, and friend. Sometimes the parameter is between two friends, sometimes it's between a Rebbe and a student, but these are more or less the three parameters. The Rebbe's asked, is it possible to keep the Torah of the tzaddik? And the Rebbe says, of course. The Rebbe says, of course God can help us, even if we're in a lowly state. It's not that God could only help those that are successful, but can help everybody in all situations. The Rebbe's asked a question. He says it's a known question. We'll speak about it later. The question is, what does it mean to light a candle to raise up someone's soul who's passed on? The Rebbe says a verse from the sages that the soul of a person is like a candle of God. Meaning a candle represents the desire to ascend. The flame of the candle is always trying to go up. So therefore we light a candle to hint to our prayer that the precious souls will go higher and higher. The Rebbe's asked, is it a belittling of the tzaddikim to ask in their merit for material matters? The Rebbe says we don't need to ask in their merit for material matters. We can directly ask God that is clothed within every person. If there's something that is bothering us, anything we need, a health problem or money problem, we can ask directly from God. We don't need to ask in the merit of a righteous person. Going to the graves of the righteous ones, the Baal HaSulam says the purpose is to arouse our hearts. Our hearts become aroused through action. So we need to make actions. There's all sorts of actions we do, like 613 mitzvot, spiritual practices. And the purpose of the practices is to arouse our hearts. And the Baal HaSulam once traveled to the Marat Machpelah, and he said there, why do we travel to the graves of the righteous? In order to make actions that bring prayer. What's the prayer? When will my deeds be like the deeds of my ancestors? That's the main point. There's other matters, but this is what the Baal HaSulam said. How do we transform our desire to receive material things to desire to receive spirituality? The answer is that the desire to receive changes when we see pleasure. As our sages say, the eye sees and the heart desires. The moment we see something pleasurable, we want to receive it. So physical pleasures, the pleasures revealed. So we want them automatically. But God we don't see. And the divine soul that's in every man and woman, we also don't see. What do we see? We see meat, pizza, money, honor. These are the things we see. We have to find a way that our eyes can see God. And this we can do through emunah, through belief. We need to learn what is emunah, what is belief, and how we can depict in our minds depictions of emunah, of belief. These depictions need to be so real and so strong to the point that we begin to yearn and want the subject of all of these depictions, which is God. So we'll continue to learn number 14. In order to save the created beings from this great distance, it was made the secret of the tzimtzum, the constriction. That is to say, there was made in the spiritual world's action that's called the first tzimtzum, the first constriction. Why is it called the first tzimtzum? Because afterwards there's another tzimtzum. So this is to know that this is the first tzimtzum. It's called tzimtzum aleph. What is this tzimtzum? What is this constriction? That a separation was made between the bechina daled, the desire to receive, and all the levels of holiness. That is to say, the Creator made that all the sefirot of the malchut, that every place in the malchut that we have the fourth aspect, the desire to receive, it's separated. It's outside of the system. Because we already learned in the drawings this week that in each spiritual world, there's 5 partsufim. And in each partsuf, there's 5 sefirot. That is to say that in every partsuf, there's all the sefirot, including the malchut. So the malchut in every single place is become separated. In the way that the measure of this receiving, this maximum measure of desiring to receive, remains a vacated space without any light. Why? Because if the desire to receive receives light, it receives the light for its own self-benefit. And receiving for its own self-benefit separates it from the Creator. Because the Creator has no desire to receive, only desire to give. So it comes out that the sphere of Malchut, that she is the true vessel, and she is the true creation, and she is the true desire to receive, is separated, is taken outside. Because all the partsufim of holiness come out with a masach, a barrier set on the malchut, that it won't receive light in this fourth aspect. What is a masach, a barrier? Like the way that sun shines through the window, and it's very strong on the face. So we open up the masach, we open the curtain, and the curtain stops the light of the sun, that it won't come inside the room and bother. Every form of separation is called a masach. For example, if there's a person that I'm not interested in them coming inside my house, so I close the door. The door is the masach that separates between the person and myself. So how do we understand the concept of masach in spiritual terms? For example, I'm at a wedding, and they're giving their cakes, like special small cakes at the end of a wedding, and they have a great desire for these cakes. So how do I make a masach? What do? I put something between me and the cakes. When we're talking in spiritual terms, it's not like that. But there needs to be a decision not to take the cake. This decision is the masach, like the curtain in physical terms. So in spiritual terms, we have a decision. So on what are we making this decision? There can be a lot of foundations for this decision. Could be a person that doesn't want to be overweight. So the person makes the masach, makes the decision not to eat the cake. It could be a different reason, health reason. I know that if I'm eating it could be for the reason that if I'm eating the cakes, I know that they'll be separating me from the Creator because I'll only be eating them out of my own physical desire in order to receive pleasure from them. And because God has no desire to receive, so my eating the cakes from my desire to receive will separate me from the Creator. So that could be the reason for the decision. When we're speaking in spiritual terms, the decision is based on not wanting to become separated from God. So what does this decision rest on? The decision rests on what I answered to one of the questions before. Because there's no decisions, it's just in the air. The decision itself has a basis, depicting the greatness of it. If in my consciousness God is exalted. So God is great. I don't want to be separated from God. It's not worthwhile to be separated from God. It's worthwhile to overcome this pleasure of the cake and not to be separate from God who is so exalted. That's called a masach, a decision that I don't receive the cake. That's called a masach. I'm reading again. Do you have questions? Are there questions, or do you understand everything? The Rebbe's asked, practically, someone who wants to attach to God will use their body only in order to sustain the body and to give pleasure to others. The Rebbe says, yes, that's very exacting. That is to say, in the stage where we are now, if we want to attach to God, we need to make a masach on physical pleasures that are unnecessary. What we need for our life, so that's not unnecessary. The Baal HaSulam says that what's necessary is not accounted for. It's something that we're only receiving out of just a physical desire for it. So that we need to make a masach on it, which I explained what that is. On the other hand, we need to develop a spiritual desire to receive. I explain again. We need to make a masach on our physical desires to receive, and we develop a desire to receive the light of God, desire to receive the Torah, the mitzvot, love between one another, to know the divine soul in each person. I hope you understand. Our progress depends on our understanding. We need to know, like we learned this morning, there's no wisdom in the world that its details aren't intertwined with one another. It's like algebra. You can't learn the advanced aspects of algebra if you haven't learned beginning aspects. Each level is built on other levels. First you learn the first level, and then you can go on to the second level, and so on. It's the same thing with this wisdom. So I ask that you go over the material. There's questions to ask. The Rebbe says you can ask me, you can ask the small groups you're learning in, you can ask the teachers in the Beit Midrash here. There's lots of teachers that can answer questions. So men teaching, women teaching. The main thing is to not sit without understanding. The Rebbe's asked if in our situation now, there's a possibility to be able to receive in order to give. For example, to eat the cake in order to have the energy to help others. The Rebbe says we need to ask ourselves, you need to ask yourself frankly, is that really the reason eating the cake? In order to have energy to help others? Or is that a way of covering up the desire to receive? The Kabbalah gives a person the ability, vessels, differentiate within ourselves. The wisdom of Kabbalah gives a person the ability to differentiate within themselves. This self-inspection is very important, because depending on how we're able to introspect ourselves, that's how we can progress. And this we are able to do through our connection with the holy books and holy people. Someone says to the Rebbe that he's teaching too quickly, that the Rebbe should learn slower. The Rebbe's asking if we agree that he should teach slower. The Rebbe's asked a question, a hypothetical question. If a person has a desire to receive spirituality, a great desire to receive spirituality, to pick to ourselves a person that has a great pleasure from Torah, from Tehillim, and so on. That's the person's pleasure in life. If in any event, if the person needs to overcome these pleasures to connect to the physical pleasures that are surrounding them. For example, a father who's very spiritual needs to lower themselves to the level of kids to play with them, or the father should only busy themselves in the high spiritual pleasures. The answer is that we need to make time for others. A person needs to lower themselves for others. The Rebbe's asked about the light of Chochmah and the light of Chasadim. The Rebbe said that Chasadim is pleasure in serving God, and Chochmah is pleasure in experiencing God, understanding the ways God is working. Knowing God's Torah is called the light of Chochmah. The Rebbe sees that some of the people are saying yes, and some of the people are saying no about the learning quicker or slower. So the Rebbe says we'll end here. Wishes everybody great success to review on the lesson.